Today, I will introduce my analysis of measuring market power in the ready-to-eat cereal industry, which wrote by Avril Neville. In this paper, Avril Neville examines the dynamics of the price margins within the ready-to-eat cereal industry. The market of this product is presented as having unique oligopoly characteristics. For instance, the price machining is said to be as a result of firm interactions and therefore no competition. To this effect, competition in this market is manifested in advertising and branding. The paper begins by starting the main objectives of the study. Specifically, it seeks to determine the true economic price-cost margins by empirical distinction between the three sources of the margins, which are potential price collusion, multi-product firm pricing, and product differentiation. However, the studies pointed to the high possibility that the huge price-cost margins experienced in the ready-to-eat cereal industry are as a result of the non-inclusive pricing. Additionally, Level established the role of setting the industry value of products as assumed by the lead firms. To prove the major points, he took a general strategy which involved a systematic analysis of the data. The data collected pertained to the per-brand demand estimates. Those estimates were used to alongside the price machining to draw different price-cost margins. Demand was taken as a function of the product characteristics, different consumer preference, and unknown parameters. Consequently, the process proceeds from the determine the demand, the supply, and the instrument of the informed determination of set sources of margins. For instance, it was discovered that the main sources were branding in the form of the product differentiation, portfolio, and the price collusion characteristics in the industry. After the results were analyzed, the model developed were tested before giving a conclusion, and the subsequent extension. The research contribution invests in the explanation of market power within the ready-to-eat cereal industry. First, through the funding of this paper, we understand the specific price determination process of this type of oligopoly. Evidently, the data analyzed and the results give solid evidence that the ready-to-eat cereal industry uses non-inclusive pricing. This means that although the producers in this sector do not compete in terms of price, they also lack a unified pricing strategy. This is contrary to that company would be collaborating to form cartel, which determine the price in the industry as a unit. Secondly, the inquiry clarified the influence of the portfolio concepts in the ready-to-eat cereal industry. According to the research, the portfolio of a company determines the amount of margins they get from their operations. Popular brands in the industry have the capacity to determine the value of different products through branding and consequently influence customer perception of each brand. This means that the producer in the ready-to-eat cereal industry was more likely to make more producing two different brands and selling them separately than when two distinct producers are willing to produce the product independently. Consequently, the importance of the advertising in this industry was very important. The elimination of a price competition and the continued introduction of new products put the emphasis on advertising as the only channel to gain some competitive advantages. Therefore, the study showed light on the pricing and advertising dynamic within the ready-to-eat cereal industry. The data collected and employed in this study was used to formulate several models that facilitate the understanding of the topic at hand. Firstly, the research was based on estimates data from the secondary sources. Those data include the information on brand characteristics, demographic distribution, and advertising. Those data on aspects such as different market share and price were obtained. The sample size consists of the 65 cities and 25 different brands in the nation. The model described around supply of the products. However, the two main models used were logit and full model. The logit model referred to statistical instruments used to determine the possibility of certain classes or event existing. The model was especially used to determine the importance of instruments of the price and the influence of the instrument's variable on the set prices. In this case, the lack of uniform elasticities within the city confirmed the difference in brand city quota. In addition to supply and the demand variable, this model employed the use the brand dummy variable as a method to reach accuracy. Another model is a full model. The full model prediction on the market share is based on the equation relating the utility of a brand to its demand level. Additionally, the model addresses metrics such as heterogeneity and the means around such difference. The difference between the inside product and the outside product was also expanded in the full model. It is also important for the research to include statistic methods such as regression in order to get comprehensive results. The paper makes a few conclusions. Firstly, the paper conclusion diverge from previously prepared reports in determining the reason of huge price-cost margins in cereal industry. The paper using Nash-Bertrand pricing game establishes that prices are determined independently and not as a unit in ready-to-eat cereal industry. The price margin were observed to show potential increase in the case of collaborated pricing within the industry. Therefore, the industry is characteristics with a firm which are successful able to maximize on profit, and those lack the tool to do so. As mentioned earlier, the means of acquiring high level of price-cost margins are a combination of a portfolio management approach by the firms in branding and advertising. This means that the way a company packages and markets the different cereal they provide has a huge impact on the price to margin costs that the cereal gets. A successful branding and marketing strategy leads to higher level of price-cost margins. Secondly, advertisements are seen as the only method of a competitive advantage. The different type of marketing trickle down to specific effects, such as a rate at which new products can be introduced and accepted in the market. The inquiry made several assumptions, which enabled the researcher to make a conclusive report. For example, the paper assumes that controlling for brand-specific means and the demographic city-specific demand shock are independent across cities. The second assumption was made when a general Nash-Bertrand computation was used. Although the general characteristics of this market indicate a high chance of it being organized like oligopoly, but assuming so without proof made it still an assumption. This fund of this research also connected to previous report, either negatively or positively. The extension used in this case includes those pertain to the works of the individual, such as Hausman, who argued that the short-term price and the competitiveness keys for the new product enter the market are introduced into ready-to-eat cereal market. The paper made detailed conclusions that were backed with a concrete data analysis. The last part I will introduce my personal opinion of this article. I think that Aviel Neville did a great job at explanation the concepts and the models. The general field of the research includes a comprehensive analysis of factors and the subsequent determination of factors and at play such as demand and supply. For example, demand was well expounded on in relation to the needs of the study. Rightfully, the paper made necessary assumptions which enable the successful processing of data and the results. The methodology used in the inquiry was meet the needs suitable and the nature of the data used. As mentioned earlier, the aim of the researcher was use estimates to determine the different level and the sources of a price-cost margins evidence in the ready-to-eat cereal industry. Therefore, the application of estimates called for the utilization of secondary data in the formation and the interpretation of the different models and the series applied. Consequently, the secondary data was successfully interpreted and compared to the real data collected from the industry to give objective results. The logic and the full model supplement each other in determining the level of price-cost margins in the ready-to-eat cereal industry. Although one understands that the market is heavily oligopoly characteristics, it's still hard to understand why ready-to-eat cereal industry have more than 200 producers and even more products at a time. Here, the author should have explained in details why the market with many producers and buyers is also considered as an oligopoly and not a competitive market. The research made sense given the assumption it gave the adoption of an oligopoly market understanding. The paper made important discovery within the ready-to-eat cereal industry, such as the role played by advertising and the price non-inclusive nature of the industry. Furthermore, the founding of Neville changed the perspective with which the economy views the sources of high price cost margins experienced in the ready-to-eat cereal industry. Indeed, the paper results and the funding add the available empirical data on the topic and provide a chance for the future study into the ready-to-eat cereal industry. That's all my presentation. Thanks.